In any event, Tracy is here with us, and many of you may not know that. I guess he doubles as Santa Claus for the local fair every year. Tracy Stoller, welcome to this episode of Free Farm Friday.
Thanks, Mike. Glad to be here.
I didn't know. You heard me one day talking about wheat. You heard me
Yeah.
talking about it. I'm saying, and I remember exactly what I said. What I said was, why can't I be like a European and drink all the beer and eat all the pasta that I want and not grow this ginormous belly? Because most Italians aren't fat. Most Mediterranean people in the Mediterranean aren't big people like us, obese. And I genuinely did not know the answer to that. Well, Tracy sent me an email and he said, I can tell you exactly why that is. And it's because of the wheat. Now, most Americans just don't know this. You know, you think the breadbasket, you see the amber waves of grain, and the wheat swaying in the wind is as American as anything. It's in Budweiser commercials. It's in commercials for NFL games. It's red, white, and it's the ingredient in apple pies, for example, here. And that's all fine and dandy, and it should be fine and dandy, but that's not what it is. And it's not that way because of something that began 6 decades ago that we have been stuck with ever since. But now we have a real opportunity here with RFK Jr. going to the HHS to actually do something about this. But why don't we start at the beginning, Tracy? What happened to the wheat supply?
Well, basically, what happened is back in 1940, um, I'll say the prideful we decided that traditional grains were just too inefficient. We couldn't grow enough of them. They needed too much land. They were too susceptible to disease and insects. And so let's call them the ubiquitous they. We always talk about they did this and they did that. Well, they decided that they needed to work on this. And so the Rockefeller Foundation funded the Mexican Agriculture Program. Now, they first started with corn because that's what the Mexicans ate. That was the staple product of their diet. And so they started hybridizing corn so they could improve the yields. Now, Mexico was a perfect place to do it because if they go down to the southeast portion of Mexico, just south and east of Mexico City in the Chapingo region, they get an early growing season and then they get a late growing season up in the northwest in the Sonora region. So they can grow one crop in Chapingo, take the seeds from there, plant them and grow them in Sonora the same year, and then shuttle the seeds right back over to Chapingo for the spring season. So they can get 2 years of hybridization in a year. And they did that with corn. And corn is a fairly stable grain. I mean, modern corn still has its issues, and a lot of the problems we see with the high fructose levels and the issues with corn. That's all part of the Mexican agriculture program. But the real problem was in wheat.
Okay.
And basically what happened is as they hybridized it, they did no testing. They didn't see if the human body would actually tolerate the wheat or not. They just looked for the characteristics they wanted. Were the heads getting bigger? Were the seeds getting bigger? Were they hybridized it with a short dwarf stalk? So instead of those 4-foot amber waves of grain that we always used to sing about as kids,
Right.
now they were 2 feet tall plants that didn't wave in the grain, in the wind. And so as they did this, a lot of things crept in. And because they weren't doing any kind of safety or digestibility testing, they didn't know that there were problems. or I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say they didn't know. I know we have people we have a bunch of conspiracy theorists, which I tend to put my tinfoil hat on once in a while, that would say that it was on purpose, but
well, the Rockefeller Foundation was involved, so people are going to say
exactly. That. I mean, they were responsible for the entire medical change from a holistic approach into modern commercial medicine and pharmaceuticals. So hey, you got to wonder if it wasn't all part of the plan.
Well, let me ask you a question as we go along here with Tracy Staller, and we're going to learn everything you ever wanted to know about wheat, but we're afraid to ask. Why did the plant, if it's becoming more powerful, why is the plant getting shorter?
Well, they had to shorten the stalk because they were increasing the size of the head. So you had a very heavy head of seeds, right?
Okay, I get it.
If you got a long stalk, it's going to fall over. So they hybridized it with a short grass that had a short stalk so that it could support that head.
Now, let me just stop you right there. Okay, again, folks, I'll try not to interrupt too much. But this just reminds me of the scene in Jurassic Park where the DNA guy is going like, well, if there was a gap in the DNA, how did you finish up the sequence to make a dino? And he goes, aha, well, we just took a strand of frog and put the frog in there. And so when you said they inserted a strand of grass in there, it's just the same thing. So you're altering the actual structure then of the DNA or the RNA, whatever a plant has, of how it actually of the instruction set of what it tells it to grow by.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And so with plants, what's interesting is everything in the progenitor species of the grain is maintained. So if you take most of the early modern wheat or the early wheat, they were either 14 or 28 chromosome wheats.
Okay.
By the time they ended with the in 1965, the modern wheat and some of the 1940s wheats as well were 48 chromosome wheats. And so they've got all these extra chromosomes which carry along all of the proteins, all of the carbohydrates that the grains had before, all of the oils. And so if we fast forward into the mid 1960s and 1965, what we ended up was a wheat that had 17 additional gluten proteins in it.
So that's sugar. That's sugar. Gluten is sugar.
Well, gluten is protein. So that's protein. That's a protein. Now, the problem is the protein is what causes, or the sensitivity of that protein is what causes celiac disease, causes inflammation. And of those 17, there are 7 that have definitely been identified as proteins that are not tolerated at all by the majority of the population. So most of us who are more sensitive than others, when we go back to a heritage grain like we've gotten from, like I've been buying from Hayden flour mills, you all of a sudden notice that you're not tired after you eat it.
Yes. You're
not bloated. And we'll get into the other things, but these grains, as they hybridized them, you ended up increasing the amount of carbohydrates in the grain heads, in the grain seeds. So now you had more and more amylopectin A, which is the primary carbohydrate in wheat. Now, the problem with it is it's almost entirely converted to sugar when it's metabolized. And it does so very easily in the body. And so these wheat heads, which are now almost 70% by weight amylopectin A, is basically pure sugar.
So so it wouldn't matter then if you're getting gold medal Pillsbury flour or whatever brand of flour, even if it's King Arthur. Which I use King Arthur. That comes from the same wheat plant that is. You're getting a flour then that does not have the chemical structure of wheat any longer. Now it basically has, if I'm understanding you correctly, it now basically has the chemical and the biological structure of a piece of a stalk of sugar cane.
Very, very close. I mean, it's high carbohydrate, much higher than it used to be, and it's higher in protein. Because there's more weight, you've got more proteins, and the proteins that are there are not well tolerated. And just to give you an idea, you look at the glycemic index for whole wheat bread now is 79. By comparison, cane sugar is 59.
Wow.
And you want to know what else is even healthier than whole wheat bread now?
What?
On a pound by pound basis? Mars bars have a glycemic index of 68, and Snickers bars that are about 41.
So eat a Snickers instead of a piece of bread.
Eat a Snickers instead of a piece of bread. I mean,
see, when women are hangry, then if you don't want to get fat and you're hangry, then defer to a Snickers bar. We're on this Free Farm Friday episode with our friend Tracy Stoller, who studies and actually doesn't just study this stuff, but gives advice and can give us the history. And also the important thing is after we discover a little bit more about what the problem is, then is there a solution? So let's go back to, so you have the glycemic index. Again, what was the number again?
For whole bread?
Yes.
For whole wheat, 79.
What is it for white bread?
White bread is just slightly lower. It's about 72.
Okay. So now, by comparison, what is an einhorn or one of the whole grains that's grown by Hayden Mills, for example, Hayden Flour Mills? What do they come in at?
It depends. The einkorn wheats are down in the 40s. These white Sonora wheats they're a little higher. They're up in the right around 60.
Okay.
Mid 50s to 60s. But they are, you don't have the other issues, and I'll get into those here in a few minutes. But one of the things that got me started, if you don't mind, I'm going to back up a little bit
all right,
and talk a little bit about what started me down this road. Because I do a lot of research, but I do it kind of on my own. And a good friend of mine who knows my struggles with being a 3X fat bastard all my life, he kept giving me books on fad diets, those ones that we all get that don't do everything in moderation. They say you eat all meat, or you eat all carbohydrates, or you don't eat anything at all. And I've tried them all, the Atkins and the blood type diet and the keto and the carnivore. And then he handed me this book, and I says, oh great. Another fad diet, right? And I opened the book up and I was like, wait a minute, this guy's got 420 references to the scientific literature in here.
Okay.
Maybe there's something to it. And so I started reading that literature. And that's where I learned all this about the Mexican agriculture program, what's going on with the wheat itself. And in there, of course, he advocates getting rid of wheat altogether.
Now, this book is called what?
I Can't Live Without Bread.
All right. What is the book called? What was the book called?
It's called Wheat Belly, and it's written by William Davis. And it changed my whole thinking about wheat and what the problem was. And so as I began looking, one of his first challenges was go back and look at your grandparents and great grandparents' photo albums. How many obese adults do you see in those?
None.
None, exactly. How many 200-pound teenagers do you see in them?
None.
None. You know, and then he asks, okay, did your grandparents go to the gym every day? Did they go out running around the neighborhood in scantily clad clothing? No. Most of them, by comparison to today, led fairly sedentary lifestyles. But they weren't 300, 400 pounds. What happened? Well, we had the, what do you call it? Was it the American Heart Association? Were those the evil ones that did this and convinced us that meat, tallow, and lard were demonic and needed to be replaced with healthy whole grains?
Yes.
And seed oils. And that's really what started all this. And so we went down. So I said, okay, obviously there was something that changed. And it changed a generation before, it changed in the 60s.
And I can remember, Tracy, if I could just interject something real quick for our audience. Tracy Stoller is our special guest. I can remember when I was a little children watching network TV, the lady who was the mom on the Brady Bunch, Florence Henderson. I remember, you're nodding your head, I remember her doing the Wesson oil commercial. She'd come on and she would say, oh, there's this wonderful new Wesson oil. I fry in 100% vegetable oil now from Wesson oil. And it's got a nice sweet taste to it and everything. So they introduced these seed oils to us as better tasting, right? So much more convenient. The poor animals didn't have to die. It was a miracle that we could get this Crisco and stuff. But I remember Florence Henderson doing the Wesson oil commercials back in the mid 70s when I was a small boy. I just wanted to interject that because you'd have to have the media go along with this, and you'd have to have big industry go along with it, and they obviously did.
Yeah. Well, and remember, what is a seed oil? A seed oil is from a seed, right?
Right.
The thing wheat is a seed. So those toxins are still in wheat. And they've been multiplied in these newer wheats because we've hybridized them with the same seed plants that we're using for oil.
Okay.
So that's something to keep in mind as far as what modern wheat goes. So we basically went back and threw out that great lesson from history about consuming things in moderation and doing things in moderation, right? So, we've got the meats and fats are bad. We need to eat whole grains. So now we make this modern wheat that not only does it have so much more sugar, the proteins in it, especially these new gluten proteins that I mentioned that weren't well tolerated and weren't well digested in the body.
Right.
Well, when the body digests proteins, they break it down into the amino acids. Well, some of these it can't break down, so they break down into what's called a polypectin. Okay, and it's just a short protein chain or a short chain of amino acids. Well, interestingly enough, these polypectins in modern wheat act like opiates. So much so that, have you ever heard of the drug naloxone?
Naloxone, no.
How about Narcan?
Yes.
Narcan I have heard of.
Okay. Well, Narcan acts against these polypectins just like opiates. And the researchers that found this out call them exorphins. Basically, they elicit opiate reactions in the brain. So they act like morphine to the brain.
Okay.
So now you've got a highly addictive wheat that you're feeding everybody. You ever wonder why you're constantly craving food when you eat wheats? You eat bread, an hour later, after your blood sugar has spiked and you've gone into that carbohydrate crash, and now all of a sudden you're hungry again.
Yes.
That is the effect of these polypectins, these exorphins. So now you've got everybody not only eating an unhealthy wheat that's not well tolerated, that causes inflammation, that causes bloating, and causes high blood sugar. You've made them addicted to it.
So now you crave more.
Now you crave more, and you crave more, and you eat more, and next thing you know, you're a 4X fat bastard.
Now I'm wondering also if there's because you say inflammation, is there a tie-in then? Is this why there has been just a massive spike and an increase plaque psoriasis?
Absolutely, those proteins they all affect. They all are responsible in some way or aggravate a lot of your autoimmune disorders.
Makes sense.
Psoriasis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, IBS. All of those things are aggravated by these gluten proteins in the modern wheat. And of course, the biggest one we hear about all the time is celiac disease. And that one is a direct product of these gluten proteins. So, that's, and not only there, it doesn't end there. There's evidence that it aggravates schizophrenia. It aggravates a lot of other mental disorders. So I mean, it's amazing how nasty this modern wheat is.
Now, most people are going to ask the question, well, is there an alternative today? Is there a way that you can get out of this? And we're with our friend Tracy Stoller here. We're learning about the Mexican Agriculture Project and funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, and then what has been done to fundamentally transform American wheat. Now, it's an interesting little sidebar here, folks. If you're watching at home, if you've ever traveled abroad, Maggie, can you quickly tell the story of Aunt? Okay. I don't remember the whole thing. Okay, so she went to Greece. Maggie's Aunt Hope went to Greece and said...
So both of my aunts went to Greece, and they were both on a diet prior to, and she had some success. She was losing weight. She goes to Greece. She ate pasta and bread and everything every single day, 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And she actually lost weight for the week that she was there.
Right, and she couldn't figure out why. Well, now we know why, because in Europe, this stuff never happened. So Europe is still, if you buy Paulaner beer, for example, and you wonder, why does it taste so just organically sweet? Well, it's because it has real natural heirloom wheat in it, and there is none of this crap. If you get, now Maggie and I started buying this until we could figure out how to make our own, Tracy. We buy pasta that is made from Italy, and I actually took your advice and I looked at the label to make sure it wasn't made from imported American wheat, which they'll do to you. No, it's 100% organically grown Italian wheat. So you can get, the point is you can get yourself off of this. There are alternatives. And then Tracy mentioned the diseases: celiac, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease. There's so many people have IBS now. Also, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. There's a massive spike in Crohn's disease. And then another one that you don't mention here, but there's another one that Hollywood and Madison Avenue have assisted in, and that's osteoporosis. Now the pharmaceutical industry has jumped in, and they're a willing partner now with Big Ag. Hey, don't worry about it. Just take Ozempic now, or whatever the drug is for osteoporosis, right?
Yep. Well, and it's interesting, where osteoporosis really comes from, and there's a lot of new research on it. When the blood, the the blood in the body needs to be right around a pH of 7, right, almost dead neutral. But when you eat grains, it makes the blood in the body acidic, puts you into acidosis.
All right.
The body has only one real long-term way to adjust the pH of the blood. And it's stored in the body, and it's calcium, and it's in the bones.
Oh.
So if you're constantly eating healthy, just high grain diets, you're going to start pulling away the calcium out of your bones and causing osteoporosis. Now, interestingly, if you eat meat, guess what it does? It puts you into alkalosis, and it raises the blood pH. And so now you can offset the effect of grains. So, eating a balanced meat and grain diet is really what we were designed to do. It maintains that neutral pH, and it keeps us from having issues with osteoporosis as we age, because we don't put that calcium back over time.
And that's okay. So this might explain why, help, I've fallen and I can't get up. So many of our, as El Rushbo used to call them, seasoned citizens, minor falls, broken hips. It's the number one thing now. Well, she didn't even fall that far. It doesn't matter. This is because they probably have mild levels of osteoporosis. We probably all do. That a minor fall, you're probably going to break your hip or your pelvis. Explains a lot. All right. So what happens to the body then if you're able to identify this? Okay. And you then can make a conscious effort to use tallows, meats, and then the kind of grains that you and I are talking about. And again, there's more than one mill that you can get this at. What then can we reverse this awful health status if we commit to it?
Yes, absolutely can. I can tell you I started using heritage grain products, heritage wheat products, about 3 months ago.
Okay.
In that time, I've lost 15 pounds with no additional effort. I've almost completely eliminated my reflux.
When you say you mean acid reflux?
Acid reflux. Okay. I've suffered from GERD so bad that I've been on proton pump inhibitors daily for the last 10 years. So I've been taking Prilosec for 10 years, just to keep it to my reflux to a tolerable level where it doesn't erode my esophagus. That's pretty much gone. I've just about completely dropped off of those. Type 2 diabetes, that's a huge one. Your blood sugar spikes. You're constantly eating these amylopectin A laced breads and products. My blood sugar is leveled out now, and I'm slowly getting things to where I don't have the insulin resistance that I had before, and I can eat breads without having huge blood sugar spikes. And all of this will reverse itself. Another one, I talked about the being addicted. I barely want to eat 3 meals a day now.
Wow.
I can sometimes eat 2. I'll eat breakfast and I'll eat dinner, and that's about it. So I don't have that hunger. I'm not constantly trying to find a snack. I mean, that was you'd always you sit there and you're going, I need something to keep me going.
And if I could just interject here again, if you're trying to figure out, well, Mike, I'm not quite understanding. This stuff is ubiquitous. You combine what Tracy and I are talking about, which is the wheat, which is everywhere. go to McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's, you're getting a bun, okay? It's got it in it. There's so much stuff that has wheat in it. Just read the ingredient label. Now, you mentioned corn. You may think, well, I don't do a lot of wheat product. I do a lot of corn. Well, we started with it. They started the Mexican Agriculture Project with corn. So has the corn been altered so that it does this as well?
It's not as bad, but here's the problem with corn and wheat as well. In the 70s, they got even more. What's the word I'm looking for? Arrogant.
Okay.
That's a good one. I won't call them evil, but arrogant. That'll work. And they started doing what they called chemical hybridization. They would take the seeds, they'd expose them to chemicals to purposely mutate the seeds and the DNA. And so now we've got you've got mutant corns and wheats in the mix as well. And then in the late 70s, early 80s, they started doing genetic modification as well. So, there's no telling with the corn how much has been genetically modified, which is the reason the Mexicans won't allow that material back into Mexico.
Isn't that amazing?
And the chemical hybridization is just as bad. I mean, we talk about, we know that in humans, certain chemical exposure leads to cancers. Well, it does in plants as well. And who's to say that material that's generated from that hybridization isn't carcinogenic? So, all in all, I like to say, if you can get away from all of those modern grains. I mean, I can tell you right now, when I was in grad school, my wife and I grew all of our food. As I became a wage slave, didn't need to anymore. So we cut back and only grew a few things. Well, over the last 4 years, we've gone back to growing almost all of our food. We can't go out to eat anymore, Mike, because we get sick.
That's right.
From the food. It's how ubiquitous the poison is in everything that's grown on these factory farms. I've been so stoked to hear RFK talk about let's get rid of this stuff. Let's get rid of this poison because it's killing us all.
And this is the thing and we'll wrap up with this, and we'll talk a couple of brands. When you hear RFK Jr. and Nicole Shanahan and our guest 2 weeks ago, when you hear Joel Salatin talk about this stuff, they're not saying this from the point of view that, well, I represent this company that makes this product. They're saying this from the point of view of that it doesn't have to be this way. And there are people that are profiting from basically sickness and death. It was just discovered yesterday, by the way. I'm just going to drop this in quickly. I didn't do a lot of research on it, but I did see a couple of people that I respect, including Casey and Callie Means, republish and retweet this. You know what they're finding out? One of the side effects of Ozempic is, and these bastards never studied it, muscle deterioration. So it's not bad enough you've got the Pfizer jab in you that's working on your heart muscle. Now, if you're jabbing yourself with Ozempic to try and lose weight, guess what? You're getting muscle loss in your heart, which is a giant muscle in your heart. So the solution is, well, we'll have Ozempic here. Basically, sell more stuff, but kill people faster. What's the solution? Well, Tracy has alluded to it, and so has Robert Francis Kennedy Jr., and he's been talking about this and suing these people for decades, and I believe he means business. I think Trump is going to turn him loose. These seed oils are bad for you. Don't eat them. Don't eat them. Maggie, what's the one you researched? I think, Tracy, avocado oil is okay? Is it okay? There are a couple of them. Is that the only one that won't kill you, is the avocado oil?
Avocado or olive oil is good.
Okay, olive oil is still good. Okay. But you don't want this crap, this Crisco stuff, this Frymax stuff in the restaurant. That's going to kill you. That has that vegetable content in it. So what you want to do is you want to try to get away from that wherever it's possible. If you're going to eat out and you wean yourself off of this, you're going to get sick.
Yeah.
You are going to get sick if you eat something that is fried in that seed oil. I can tell you. So you want to wean yourself off of that. Now let's talk about things that folks can do at home immediately. What can you do at home? The first thing you can do is stop feeding your family this garbage. If you've got gold medal flour, and this is not a knock against the gold medal company because they will come around once we do away with this. If you've got whatever Pillsbury, gold medal, whatever, King Arthur, doesn't matter what the brand is. Don't use it anymore. Get rid of it. Give it. I was going to say give it to a homeless shelter. You may just have to eat it and throw it away. You mentioned Hayden Flour Mills. There's another one in Montana, right?
Yeah, I've not used them before, but I've seen them, heard good things about them, but I haven't personally used that.
Okay, Hayden Flour Mills is a wonderful company. It's family owned and operated. In 2008, they started in the desert in Arizona, in the cold tundra desert in Arizona. And they, the dad said, "Well, I want to see if I can grow pre-Mexican agriculture project heirloom wheat," and he did. And he grew the, is it Sonoma?
White Sonoma.
Yeah,
White Sonora.
he grows 4 kinds, and now 15 years later, it's a growing thing because more people like us are finding out about it. This is all we use, folks. We use Hayden Flour Mills bread flour. We use Hayden Flour Mills all-purpose flour to bread anything in. We use Hayden Flour Mills semolina if you're going to make your own pasta. And they even have an artisan bread formula, and they have a pizza dough formula. So no matter what it is, so the first thing, and you don't have to use Hayden Mills. I'm just telling you, they advertise if you got celiac problems, if you got gluten intolerances, give our flour a try. They don't guarantee it, but they encourage, try it, bake something with it, and then try it and see if your body can tolerate it. This is a step that you take. Now, if you find out that this is good, and I think this is ultimately a win-win for everyone, well, this puts us back in the kitchen like we used to do, making our own breads. It's fine to buy bread from someone. I'm not saying that there aren't great bakers out there. They're just using the wrong product. Ultimately, if RFK Jr., when the science comes in, which a lot of it already exists, and this wheat stuff is evaluated as well, because I've heard him talk about that he doesn't. All he eats is imported Italian wheats now. He won't eat any of that because it makes him sick too. What needs to happen is that the general government of the United States, and if this has to happen state by state, it should, but you got to get it off the continent. It needs to be banned. This crap needs to be banned. It's inhuman. It's killing people, shortening people's lives. It's making us all unhealthy. It needs to be banned. If we can ban DDT, because it was doing this or that or the other, and you can ban CFCs or what have you. You can ban freaking wheat. But you have to do this. You're going to have to phase it in because the farmers are going to have to learn how to grow this stuff. And then you're going to have to, from that wheat, you got to get the seeds, right? So Hayden, a company like Hayden Mills, it maybe has a side business with just providing the seeds.
Yep. Well, and the nice thing is when they go back to the heritage grains, you don't have the patents on the seeds. So now the farmers can keep their seeds from the previous year and replant them.
And it won't get sued by Monsanto.
Exactly.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, there are lawsuits over this. By the way, another thing that this will have an impact on beer.
Yep.
Beer's made with wheat, malted wheat and barley. You go back to, and this is why Mexican beers taste different. This is why Italian beers and German beers taste different because they're made with that. Same thing with whiskeys. Why does a Scotch whiskey taste so much different than a bourbon? Why does a Irish whiskey taste so much different than an American whiskey? Because it's made with heirloom wheat. There's none of this glycemic crap in it. Tracy, okay, so we've given you some alternatives. Again, Maggie, what's the name of the company, that brand of wheat, that pasta that we get? Oh, you just put it in there. Can you, just for our listeners out there? Rumo. It's out of Baton Rouge. The company's out of Baton Rouge that distributes it. There's a company in Baton Rouge. But that is one. What's the one in Baton Rouge? Um, we'll put it in the notes under the video. All right, Tracy. We're gonna have to wrap this up. We're just about out of time. Some final words.
Well, I'm gonna leave you with a trivia question,
Okay.
and that is, how did white Sonora wheat get to the American continent? I'll give you the answer real quick. It was Father Keno. He brought it over to make communion hosts.
I did not know that. So it had a holy purpose.
It did.
And bright Sonora wheat is one of the wheats that you can get from Hayden Mills.
Yeah.
Hayden Flour Mills. All right. We will put all of what we talked about and links to everything in the show notes below this on the YouTube. Tracy, as always, thank you for the great research. I can't believe that you just that this was only 3 months for you. I thought you knew this for 13 years.
No. That's one of the advantages of getting a traditional PhD. They teach you how to learn things.
Imagine that.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks to Tracy Stoller for being our special guest, folks. I encourage you to pursue this again. We're not trying to demonize the companies. It is what it is. Okay, that wheat is in the supply. There is an alternative, and as a company like Hayden Flour Mills becomes more and more popular, others will go like, well, we can make a buck at this. It's important though. Make sure that you're getting heirloom pre 1950 or say heirloom wheat products, and you also look for the corn. If you're into drinking bourbon, I can tell you at least one still out of Austin, Texas. They claim that they only use 100% pre-Mexican agriculture project corn. So try all of that and let us know. Please, in the comments on YouTube especially, folks, share this video with everyone you know, including Robert Francis Kennedy Jr., because we want him to know there are other people out here that are talking about this. That's going to wrap up this episode of Free Farm Friday here